to the Great Chicago Fire. However, Chicago gets a nickname from this event, or from what happens after this event, which is the second city. So without so traumatic, what happened with the Great Chicago Fire is the reason why we have this beautiful city here. Chicago got to replan, to come up with ideas like the Burnham Plan for how we wanted this city to look in the future. I think that's what's really cool about Eric Montgomery having Grant Park as a gift to the future of Chicago. They planned what we're doing today. They knew that we'd be on this boat. But when the Great Chicago Fire started, well, I just said that. But, okay, so we don't know how the Great Chicago Fire started, but we know where. What do you all know about how the fire started? You can just shout things out.
Cow.
The cow. I'm hearing the cow. Okay, so Catherine O'Leary. We'll actually get to see where the fire started once again. But there are a lot of theories to how the fire started. One being the cow and Mrs. Catherine O'Leary's barn. So Catherine O'Leary, the story goes, Catherine O'Leary picks up a lantern, goes to her barn to milk her cow Daisy. Daisy kicks over the lantern, starts the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. False story. So Catherine O'Leary and her cow Daisy were actually exonerated years later in Chicago because everyone believed it. The O'Learys fled the city of Chicago. But there are more theories as to how the fire started. Some say a group of teenagers were smoking a cigarette. One of them flicks the bud into the barn, and that starts the Great Chicago Fire. Others say that there was a meteor shower that also could have started the Chicago Fire. Once again, there are a lot of theories. We don't know how it started, but we do know where it started. Fort Dearborn, Great Chicago Fire, Fort Fire. Now we talk about the fair. In 1893, Chicago held the World's Fair. This was for the Columbus Exposition. Now, this fair introduced a lot of products that we still see today, such as the zipper, Cracker Jacks,
Ice.
the brownie. So if you've gotten to visit, or maybe you'll want to visit, the Palmer House Hilton in Chicago, the inside of the building is beautiful. But this is where the brownie recipe and the first brownie originates from, the Palmer House. They actually made this brownie for the World's Fair. And then our last star on the Chicago flag is the Century of Progress Fair, another fair that happened in 1933. But let's take it back to 1893, because this fair, how we got the fair, is also how Chicago got another one of its nicknames. So when we wanted the fair, and the reasons why Chicago wanted the fair, they're making progress from recovering from the Great Chicago Fire. So to have half of the U.S. come to Chicago would just be incredible for this progress that we're making. So, Chicago gets another nickname from how we got this fair. So, Chicago sent our best politicians, and by best politicians, I mean our worst politicians, to DC in order to lobby for the fair. These people were pulling up to people at dinner, in the bathroom, and asking them if they could talk to them about Chicago and why Chicago should have the fair. Eventually, Chicago gets the fair. One New York reporter named Charles Dana was not happy. He wrote, "I can't believe Congress gave the fair to those windy windbags from that windy city. We are not the windiest city. That is how we got that nickname, because of our hot air-filled politicians."
Is there a windiest city?
On our left here, This is one of the St. Charles Airline bridges. It is not, it's no longer in use. However, the bridge is tested once a year. You can't just leave these bridges, you have to make sure that they are safe. But this bridge specifically shipped goods from Montgomery Ward. Alrighty, we're gonna cruise just for a couple of minutes here. But as we get back up to the junction of the river, be sure to take a look to your left and view down the main branch at all of this architecture that we've gotten to see here.
Just keep the eyes correctly, okay?
Alrighty, we have some wonderful views of the main branch there. So I want to bring your attention back again to the fans that are on our right side here. So these are the exhaust fans for the railroads. And I bring this up because a part of the Daniel Burnham plan, the Burnham plan of 1909, was to improve the railroad system here. So if you didn't know, Chicago is actually the railroad capital in the United States. Now, these trains that sit on our right as we go down the South Branch, I want you to know that they used to sit on the left. So a part of improving those railroad systems was bringing them to the opposite side. Okay, let's take a look on our right here. That is the L train. So this is 150 North Riverside. And for a long time, no one built here because the building sits between the Chicago River and active railroad tracks. So the base of this building is about the width of this boat. How did they do it? Mass water damper tanks sit at the top of this building. And when the building sways in one direction, these gallons holding 160,000 gallons of water sloshes to the opposite direction in order to balance out that building. And that building is also built with some of the world's strongest steel. Now, we want our buildings to sway. We want them to work with the nature. And the architects there are Getchen Partners, which I say because they also designed the Bank of America Tower on our left. So those beams, those diagonal beams, complement the diagonal beams that we see on 150 North Riverside as well. But that's not the only building that uses a type of damper system. Take a look on our right here at 100 North Riverside. This left end that we're passing here, there are switch tracks under the building. You can't build a base into switch tracks. So that end of the building is suspended off of the right end. There are points under 100 North Riverside where you could wave your hand under the building. Take a look back. That's one of the 5 trusses that hold that building up, suspending it like a diving board from the right end. On our right here is 2 North Riverside. This is an Art Deco building. The architects are Hollowbird and Root, and the building was completed in 1929. So we know this is Art Deco because of the setbacks. But this building was also the first to have what's known as air rights. So we have the Amtrak and Metro trains running underneath these buildings, and they also own the air above them. So these buildings pay yearly air rights in order to keep these buildings here. I don't know the air rights payment for 2 North Riverside, but for 100 North Riverside, they pay $1.2 million for air rights every year. And all of the buildings on this side pay those air rights. If you look here, you'll actually see the trains. There's an Amtrak train there. And now look above it at Gateway 1 and 2. These buildings look a lot like Mises buildings because they are in the international style. But I know you're wondering, do the folks feel or hear these trains. These buildings are actually soundproof and shockproof. And not only that, there are pipes that run through the building in order to release that exhaust from the top of the building. So this is kind of the Gateway Center. So we have Gateway 1, Gateway 2. This white box that looks similar is Gateway 3. I think they got bored and went with the white color.
Grabe yung ano ba? Nag-operate ng bank na agenda. Kagaya ng ano. Grabe.
The Chicago River taxi is right behind us. If you're looking for a way to get around Chicago using the river taxi is a wonderful way to do it, especially if you want to go to Chinatown, which we'll see a little bit later here. Here is a Union Station entrance. So there are a lot of films that have happened and been filmed at Union Station. It's a really cool place to check out even if you're not traveling. On our right, this building with the X bracings, this box, this is the former Market Exchange. So these traders needed an open floor plan in order to use their hand signals. So these X bracings were invented by Dr. Fosler Kahn, and they hold the weight of the building on the exterior to allow for that open floor plan. On our right here is Gateway 4. So Gateway 4 is designed by James DeStefano. And the cool thing about the building is this mosaic-like glass. Take a look on the opposite side. That red little marker there is a "You Are Here" marker. So this building, this was a concrete wall because the river was kind of like an alley. So when Gateway 4 went up, they decided to put this map here so it can reflect, so that it's just not a bare wall. And I can say, we're here.
Go down.
On our right, the former U.S. Post Office. So this post office was built in the 1930s. If you look directly on the right, if you see those chandeliers hanging, those lights hanging there, another one for Dark Knight fans. When the Joker robs the bank at the beginning of the Dark Knight, they shoot it right there in the lobby. So this building was the largest post office in the U.S. And in about 1990, the U.S. government decided that the building didn't serve us anymore. So we had a lot of new technologies. So the building just became a bit outdated. So again, the U.S. government decided that the former post office building no longer served the purpose that they needed in 1990. And for 7 years, they spent time trying to figure out where to put the new post office up until they decided to put it right next door. That blue glass, you'll see it more as we pass under the bridge. But this is the Cardis Collins post office. Cardis Collins is the fourth black woman voted into the House of Representatives U.S. So this is actually the most automated post office in the U.S. Right here on our right, the Cardis Collins Post Office. So that opened in 1997. And some more info about the former post office. Up top of that, on that building, is a green roof and a track. I don't know if it's true, but I heard they encourage their employees to bring their dogs to it. On the left side of the boat here, this open greenery, soon we'll have more residencies here. The Reed is pretty new, this building on the left a bit ahead of us there.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
So cute.
Naka-internet na ako sa Canada na mag-music ako, ma'am.
All right, start to take a look at this building on the left side of the boat. We saw something that looked a bit similar to it. So this is River City, another one by Bertrand Goldberg. So remember when we saw the Marina City Towers. So again, Bertrand Goldberg had this idea of a city within a city. So when you go home, you have everything that you need to function. On top of this building, there are swimming pools. We have a marina for the boats. I really like this one because you can see the daycare here on that first floor level. So again, a city in a city. This was actually supposed to be one of 4 river cities. These buildings would have snaked their way up the Chicago River, but they stopped after the first one because honestly they didn't think that people would want to live on the river here. And the building is also designed to look like a sandcastle.
Interesting.
Now can we
Let's
go
look at the
down?
marshals over here. Just for
Ooh.
fun.
So
I'm kidding. So look at the radio tower that's right next to it, that red and white radio tower. That is the location of Catherine O'Leary's barn. That is where the Great Chicago Fire started in 1871. On October 8th of 1871, the Chicago Fire started. That fire spread. It jumped these branches of the river. Some would say that the river ignited as well, and that's how that fire spread. Others say that the winds blew embers and started fires on those other ends as well.
It could be.
So that is the location where the Great Chicago Fire started.
Yung babae.
Yes, she was. There was a ceremony held for Catherine O'Leary years after the Great Chicago Fire where she was exonerated. Because, again, the story was made up. On our right here, this is the old Union Station power plant. They supplied power to the railroads. It closed in 2011. So a lot of people ask, why has this building not been adaptively reused? Well, first, it's federal property. But second, they burned coal in the building. So there's a lot of coal dust on the building. So also radiation. So that is why we are not currently using this building here.
Interesting.
Burned up.
The radiation.
Some other things that we got from the Burnham Plan of 1909. So the Burnham Plan of 1909 sought to beautify the city of Chicago, improving the railroads as we've talked about, implementing more parks in the city, and also, I'll point it out again when we get down there, the Eisenhower Expressway runs through the base of the old post office. And that was in the design, in the Burnham Plan of 1909. All right, let's look into the distance on. Here comes the
How's your birthday?
78. You see those boxes on.
How is your
the
birthday?
side. So this is where.
How is your birthday?
Chicago's 78th neighborhood is being planned. But this.
Are you enjoying it?
Here,
Yeah.
There's been
Okay.
a lot of. And the name of the neighborhood will be the 78th. So we talked a little bit about the Basque-Trunion Bridge.
Turn around.
The Basque-Trunion Bridge, there's one directly behind us. There's 37 of them in Chicago, and they were invented in Chicago. So in the process of getting to the Basque-Trunion Bridge, they tried a few. So as I was saying, Chinatown used to be more downtown Chicago. After implementing these new highways, Chinatown, a lot of people started moving to this area. And while Chinatown was pushed out of downtown Chicago, in the long run, this actually allowed for more people to populate Chinatown. Chinatown would not be as large as it is today if it were still downtown Chicago.
There you go.
That's only the second time that I've seen a train there. So that is, we just experienced a very cool moment together. I'm gonna ask you to turn around, look up top. Those are the counterweights on down as the bridge here raises up. Up top, that little house, that is where the bridge is operated.
So, ano tayo kasi alam ko naman yun po na mga buildings na other side. So, mabalik na tayo doon. Yung ano lang yung sa CR lang. Kaya nga sabi ko, CR na ayos mo. Sabi ko, which na yung 100.
3 bed, at least 3 bedrooms.
Yes, correct, correct. Yes, correct.
Dito sa gagastos ka din naman. Yung may last pa ba?
Kaya
Huwag lang mawawala ang internet. Masisiraan ng bayan.
pasisiraan ng bahay. O silang dalawa ni Seret.
Diba naglalaro sila?
Yun lang yung business nila.
Gaming.
Ako nagpunta sila ng birthday. Walang internet. Nagpunta dito para sa YouTube. Oo, di ba? Walang internet.
Walang internet nila ng 1 week. Ay, si doktor ang may hawak ng account. Hindi nila mapacheck.
Alright, y'all, we're gonna get started in just 1 minute here.
Hindi nila.
Oh my goodness.
At saka yung naka-solar panel sila. Kaya up to...
Diba?
Pero
Sino
dapat
naman?
dapat yung tuturuan ng mga bata.
Oo.
Si JPX daw pala natutulog na ng may inhaler bini. Nagaya mo, di ba? Ako pa tayo.
Hindi, gusto ko mint din. Gusto, oo. Kaya nga nagpabili ako kasi gana feel refreshing.
Tapos sabi... Ayun yung big
Culture, specifically grain. So sitting on top of the Board of Trade building, which is an Art Deco style building, Halliburton and Root are the architects. Now, Series up there doesn't have a face. So when the architects were asked why they didn't give the statue a face, they said, well, no one's gonna build a building tall enough to see her face.
What's the use nga naman? Pero hindi, matatapos.
Let's look to the left at this building clad in a red color right in front of Willis. That is 311 South Wacker Drive. Now, unless you flew into Chicago this morning, you may have already noticed this building in the skyline because it once had 2,000 lights, about 1,800 now, but those lights shine bright enough to illuminate the clouds on a foggy day. Now, some people say that 311 South Wacker is the queen piece to the Willis Towers chess piece, but they just say that. The architects did not have that in mind at all. But the building was built about true. But when I was training, someone told me that that building was in Morse code. I was so disappointed when I found out it was not. All right, so we already talked a bit about bundled tubular construction. Talking about the next building. So this building, the name WILLIS is for Sears Tower. Was completed in 1973. So the Sears Tower is 110 floors. It has 107 elevators. You take multiple elevators to get up to the top floor. And again, this bundled tubular construction. But on the 103rd floor, if you see those boxes there, that is the ledge. Has anyone visited the ledge? Yeah. Did you enjoy it? Yeah, cool. So if you have not been to the ledge, you should really try it out. So on the 103rd floor of the Sears Tower, you step out onto glass and you just see your feet in the earth below you. So the reasoning behind the name. So Sears used to own a lot of the top floor offices in this building, but they moved out of the building second to it.
Lights naman. Ganda.
There it is, right on our right, the Willis Sears Tower.
Hindi ang maganda nung nandoon kami sa...
Wave, this might be in a picture. Hi!
Puno, mga trees, walang leaves. Sabi niya, Guy, dun sa campus mo, patay na ba yung mga puno na yun? Hindi na, nag-aalis na yung dahon. Tapos babalik man yan.
This next building on our right here, I just want to point out the exterior structure on the building. So what that brace-like structure does, it provides more shade to keep that building cooler. Now let's look at this building beyond the bridge here. Take a look at these staggered corners. So this building has 16 corner offices on each floor. This is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the CME group. Take a look at the bridge house as soon as we come from under the bridge and just observe the construction there around that bridge house. So fun fact, all of the bridge houses in Chicago are preserved. These are the original bridge houses. Now let's look at the CME group building here. So Fujikawa and Johnson are the architects. The left tower here was completed in 1984. The right tower completed in 1987. When they put these together, they were afraid that the towers would start to lean inward. So, from the first to the 16th floor, they extended those floors out 1/8 of an inch. From the 16th floor to the top, they brought them inward 1/8 of an inch. And as we approach this next bridge house, that's why I pointed that one out, they constructed this building around the bridge house on the left end here. Look at how close this building sits to the bridge house.
Tignan mo, pag ganito lang tayo, kaysa maglalakad tayo doon.
I know, right?
Yeah, hindi ako eh.
All right, this next building is the Civic Opera Book Building.
Civic.
It's easier to sketch out a V there instead of a U, Civic Building. But this building was completed in 1929, the same year as 2 North Riverside. These are both Art Deco style buildings, and it's why they both kind of look like thrones. But this one has more story behind that. So this building gets a nickname, Imsel's Throne. Samuel Imsel had this building built. Here's another gossip story for you. It's not true. But they say that Samuel Imsel had a mistress. She was an opera singer in New York, and she was terrible. So he built her own opera building here, and she was still terrible. But we have this beautiful building. It is Art Deco on the riverside, but on the street side, that building is French Beaux Art style architecture. And Samuel Imsel, he did a lot of work with the trains. They say that that throne is sit to face the trains, but also it has its back to the East Coast because of the whole New York thing there. But Samuel Imsel goes on to become the president of Thomas Edison's company, and when he fell into some financial hardship, he actually fled the U.S. He had thousands of dollars that belonged to Chicagoans. They were literally chasing him around the world trying to find Samuel Imsel, and they did not. Ultimately, Samuel Imsel passed away in Paris, I believe. Once again, those diagonal beams on the Bank of America Tower are to complement the beams that you see on 150 North Riverside. Same type of steel used in the construction, some of the world's strongest.
Namang ilalim ng base niya, liit kaysa doon sa parang siya taas.
Pag typhoon, naman siya, kaya
Okay lang yan tayo.
On our right here, Beatnik is a Mediterranean restaurant. They have really pretty entrees and drinks if you want, photos of your food. The building itself here is the Great Lakes Building. It was built in 1912. But before that, there once stood a temporary structure here called the Wigwam. The Wigwam is where the 1860 Republican Party was held, where Abraham Lincoln took that nomination. The Wigwam stood right here before the Great Lakes Building. And we are making our way back to the junction right now. We're going to be going back up the main branch in a moment here.
Yeah. Doon lang tayo kanina, di ba? Akala natin na ano.
Umikot tayo.
Nakala ko ang Chicago ano lang. Kaya nga, yung may bisita ko ng magnificent. Sabi nila, punta ka na.
On our right, 333 West Wacker, and it shows off a style of architecture known as contextualism. So contextualism is when the building is sensitive to the world around it. So look at eye level at this clay colored base. That clay color is because at the bottom of the Chicago River sits clay. And this green glass represents the colors that you see in the Chicago River. So the Chicago River is actually naturally this color. Once again, there's clay at the base of the river, and on top of that clay grows algae, and that's why we get this reflection color that we see today. And you'll also notice that this building bends with the river. Once we get a little bit closer to the bridge, be sure to look back and also see how the building matches the environment of the street there as well. Contextualism. And you may also recognize this building from some films. The Truman Show showcases this building, as well as Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The dad's office was literally in that building watching the parade. Yeah. All right, let's look at this gray box with the projectors in it. So every night in Chicago, around 8:30, 9 o'clock, you can see Art on the Mark, the world's largest digital art projection. The screen, the face of the merchandise mart. Currently, I believe it is sponsored by Chicago Public Schools. As you can see, you can get food and beverages here and enjoy Art on the Mark. Again, that's about 8:30, 9 o'clock here in Chicago. Let's take a look at the water here, this greenery. Those are fish hotels. So today we have 77 species of fish in the Chicago River, which is amazing considering the industrial past and the way that we use this river in its history. You can also learn to fish here. It is catch and release fishing. Following what I just said, I don't suggest you eat the fish in the Chicago River. On our right here, this metal thing is an eyelash. It keeps debris from falling down on you when you're walking under the bridges on the river walk. And on our right here, this building that kind of looks like it has two styles of architecture or built at two different times, it's because it was. So the left side of the building is by Graham Anderson, Probst and White. It was completed in the 1920s. In the late 1930s, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill did this addition that we see on the right end. That is the Builders Building. Right next door is the LaSalle Wacker building. So this building is another great example of the Art Deco style of architecture. So one huge creates this flow between those windows. So before air conditioning, they would open those windows so that the wind could flow to one side of the building to the other side of the building. That's the LaSalle Wacker building. We're also riding alongside Wacker Drive. Has anyone driven on Wacker Drive? No? Yes? Yes? Has anyone been lost on Wacker Drive? I have. Well, Wacker Drive has 3 levels. Wacker Drive, Lower Wacker, and Lower Wacker. So Lower Wacker, you'll probably never visit, but it's the reason why you don't see as many semi-trucks. You never. It's 77 West Wacker. The building was completed in 1992, and it showcases two styles of architectural influence. Up top, Greek influence. At eye level, French influence. Now, the building next door, 55 West Wacker, this style of architecture is called brute, as in brutalism. Now, the root word brute actually translates to raw concrete. So, in the U.S., we see a lot of brute-style buildings, and they are our government buildings. However, if you look this up, it originated in the UK, and those buildings look just incredible. But this is the brute style of architecture that is raw concrete. If you're wondering why Morena City Towers are not raw concrete, it's because these buildings, they extend up higher. So a brute style building is more base level into the ground. So these curves and the way that these extend much, much higher, that's why that is not the brute style of architecture. Right here on our right, 35 West Wacker Drive. This is the Leo Burnett Advertising Agency building. If that name doesn't ring a bell, the characters that come out of the building will. And the Meow Mix jingle, all from that building. Yeah. Of a mission. So Daniel Burnham had two sons, the Burnham brothers, and they designed this building, clad in green terracotta with 24 karat gold at the top, almost like a chimney. Anybody see it? Go ahead and point at it. Yeah, right there. They built that building in protest to look like a bottle of champagne. 1978, and it would have originally been a twin tower, but they fell into some financial hardship and they weren't able to build that second tower there. But that is Mather Tower. Right next door, London House. There's someone standing right there. You'll have the most beautiful views of the river. That is a rooftop bar there.
And the mo yung pinuntahan mo. New Year. Hindi, Christmas.
Take a look back over your right shoulder at the jeweler's building. Those 4 temples there once held water cannons in case of a fire. Now that building also had a 22-story car garage. So those jewelers would drive to work, drive their car into a car elevator, ride up to their floor, park in the hallway, and then go to their desk. So they weren't walking the streets of Chicago with their jewels. Now the top temple there, that was once the Stratosphere Lounge, a speakeasy. A lot of people say that Al Capone hung out there, but others say that Al Capone was not walking the city by the time that building was there. So we got to talk a little bit about the Tribune Tower earlier today. It's on our left here. Did we? It was built in 1925. I'm just going to go over all of it if we did it. But this is the neo-Gothic style of architecture. Up top, those arches that you see, those are called flying buttresses. So when the Chicago Tribune built the Tribune, pieces of earth from different buildings, walls in the U.S., from the Great Wall of China to the moon, all in the base of the Tribune Tower. Now, when this building won, a lot of Chicagoans liked the building that got second place more. It's not the building, but this one on our right here, this Art Deco style building, that's inspired by the building that was second in that contest. Let's take a look at the Hyatt Regency on our right center. This white building, you'll see it in a moment if you're in the back of the boat. But this is the Aon Center. So the Aon Center was completed in 1973, and the architect's name is Edward Durrell Stone. Now, Edward Durrell Stone clad this building in Italian marble. It was beautiful. But over 9 harsh Chicago winters, that marble began to crack with the potential to fall down. So, Edward Durrell Stone had to reclad the building in North Carolina granite. It was a mistake that cost him $80 million. I also want you to know that I made that building out of toothpicks and super glue in 5th grade. All right, let's look at the James Hardy right here on our right. And you'll see this building with the undulating balconies peering out from behind the James Hardy. When this building was complete in 2009, it was the largest building in the world designed by a woman architect. Jeannie Gang right here from Chicago completed that building in 2009. Remember Harry Weiss, who uses nautical themes? This is another building by Harry Weiss. It almost looks like a ship sailing into the Chicago River. So, as I mentioned, Jeannie Gang had the tallest building designed by a woman architect. However, in 2021, her record was shattered by her. Can you guess what building is also by Jeannie Gang? Yeah, St. Regis. This blue wavy building. So her buildings incorporate this like water theme, aqua in St. Regis. But St. Regis is actually a hotel, and then up top condos. Take a look at the 83rd floor and notice that there is no floor. So when they were testing wind shearing on models of this building, it kept failing. So they decided to take out the 83rd floor to allow that wind to simply blow through the building. The building also has those mass water damper tanks that we talked about on 50 North Riverside when I used the water bottle as an example. Now, those damper tanks are just providing more security. This building is it sways a lot less with that blow through there. And again, we do want the buildings to sway. Folks up top having toilets and not bidets.
Yeah, pero it's supposed to be, pinaano po sila, pero
Hindi sila po ng time.
the whole family is na-schedule basta may ID. Second,
Alrighty, we are headed towards Lake Michigan, which means that I get to talk to you about the Chicago. Behind you or in front of you, which way does this river flow? All right, a couple of us have it right. Okay, so the river actually flows that way. So why does the river of Chicago fire? So folks are drinking this water. We're throwing all of our waste in and it's flowing into our main source of water. So about 10% of the population each year dying from waterborne illnesses. Until finally someone said, we need to do something about the water. So, Des Plaines River. So, the Chicago River sits a little bit higher than the Des Plaines River. So, they were digging for about 20 years. They dig out more dirt than the Panama Canal. And on January 2nd of 1900, after digging and digging, Chicago blew up that dam, creating the canal that connected the Chicago River to the Des Plaines River. And that reversed the river, the flow of the river, and sent this water flowing down to the Des Plaines. St. Louis was not happy. St. Louis sued the city of Chicago for sending their waste down into their water. We had that court case held in Chicago of the Earth's fresh water. All right, y'all, but we have some beautiful views of the skyline here. So I'm going to pause my narration for a moment. We're gonna sit here. Y'all are gonna get some beautiful pictures. If you need me to take a photo, literally just wave or say Trajet and I got you. But we'll be right back in a moment.
Only picture
Oh my gosh, I want to go there. I really want to go there. It's fun.
That is Eek,
Jamie,
one of our little birds there.
Jamie.
Don't bother him, he's territorial.
no. Juliet, stand up over there. Right there.
All right, y'all, I know that was a quick
Right
break
there.
there, but we are going to pick it back up. At this point, we are headed back to the dock. So if you have an alcoholic beverage, please start to finish that up. You cannot take. I'm happy with what we've done.
Don't fall.
This is the Sheraton. On our right, as you emerge from the bridge, take a look at MBC Tower. Way back to the dock here. So once again, if you have an alcoholic beverage, please finish that up or throw it away on your way off of the boat. You cannot take that alcohol off of the boat. Please remain seated as we make kiss up against the dock, just a little bit here. But once again, y'all, we are, as you can see, moving towards the dock here.